Fatima Books returns and says, "Hi, Mr. Luke." Mr. Luke? Oh, a mister. I'm a mister. All right, I'll take it. This is my 4th time sharing with you. Please teach us the nuances of these words and how to use them. Employment versus work, career versus job, function versus task, and hire versus employ. Okay, these are good. So there's a kind of theme here that Fatima is suggesting. The theme seems to be something like professional, workplace, employment related, something like that, which is nice. Okay, so let's explore these one by one, starting with employment versus work. Okay. Now these two have an overlap. We've talked about this before, but I often mention the Venn diagram of words, right? The Venn diagram of words means you have two words which are called synonyms, which means they have the same meaning. But really, that looks like this, meaning that they overlap in a place, but that they have their own totally separate meanings. Because if someone says, that is a beautiful work of art, can we say, what is a beautiful employment of art? No, ridiculous. So absolutely, employment and work are different, but there is territory that is shared by both of them. What is the territory? All right, so sometimes people will ask you what you do, right? They won't say, what is your employment? But they might say, what do you do for work? What do you do for work? And your answer might be something like, my work is, or I'm employed by a tech startup and we build blah, 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 right? I'm employed by, I work in, so these can be related. Now, employment is a general state of having a job that allows you to be hired. Usually, employment is as the worker, your relationship to the employer, who's the one who's paying you to do work. Now, this gets a little tricky when we talk about things like freelance, because freelance is when you do things individually for different people. For example, you're a designer, you do a project for this company and that company. Are you being employed by each company that you do a project for or you do work for creatively? Well, we usually say no. That's why we call it freelance. But we could call it freelance work as opposed to freelance employment. So that's one difference. Employment focuses on that long-term relationship between the employer, the one paying you, and the worker, who are in a sort of, it doesn't have to be a contract, but it's a sort of contract or long-term engagement, which requires usually agreeing on healthcare benefits, agreeing on when you're going to go to work every day, the hours that you have to work, whether or not you have dental and vision insurance with the company, all kinds of things like that, your responsibilities. That complex relationship is considered your employment, and the person or the company that you work for is called your employer, and you are called an employee. So we have these three words to talk about this relationship. Employment is the overall whole relationship thing, you working at this place in a kind of permanent way, although of course you could quit. And then employer, employee. The one working, the one being paid, the one who's employed you, the one paying you to do specific work, usually on an ongoing basis, assuming that it's not a temporary thing, like freelance. Now, work is so much more general, right? That employer, employment, employee thing, that's pretty specific. Work is very general. Freelance work, yes. When we're actually doing work at our job, yes, I'm employed, but I don't, when I'm doing the work, say I have so much employment to do. I say I have so much work to do. The stuff we have to get done is the work that we have to do. So work doesn't focus on the relationship between me and the employer. Now, we kind of could suggest it if we say my work is in finance or something like that. Yes, I suppose that could suggest the employer-employee relationship. But really the focus is on what do you do? What is the kind of thing that you have to do day to day, right? Do you have to analyze things and then make models and make recommendations about how to invest money if you're in finance? Okay, that's the kind of work you do. What work do? I make videos and I make courses to help people improve their English. That's what work I do. Should I say that that's my employment? Well, I could say generally that I'm self-employed in that way. That's actually a common term that people use. I'm self-employed. But if I say self-employed, I'm not really talking about or focusing on the work. I'm focusing on the relationship of myself to myself, right? In other words, I'm kind of my own boss. That's the focus. So it's more similar to when we were talking about employment. Work, again, focusing on the things that you're doing, the kind of stuff that you do, we say, work on. And as I mentioned earlier with the painting, once you finish something, sometimes we say, for example, a work of art. I'm so busy today. I have so much work to do. I'm sorry. I can't help you. I just have so much work to do. Okay, so that's generally the difference between those two. That's what they feel like. Now, how about career and job? Now, these also have overlap. Generally speaking, career is the kind of work that you do, and job is a specific type of employment or a specific period of employment within a career. Usually when we talk about a career, we're not talking about a certain job. We're talking about the kind of job throughout maybe your whole lifetime or throughout a specific period of work. Let's say, for example, I decided I didn't want to teach English anymore. I wanted to stop and I wanted to do something else. So I would say, for example, I'm going to change careers. I've been doing English teaching for a long time. Let's say I worked at this company and that company and I was self-employed. I had many different jobs in this career, and then I decided to end and do something else. I decided to open a flower store. This is my new career. I'm a florist. Okay, right? That's my new career. But as a florist, maybe first I work at a flower shop, and then I work in a flower factory, and then I open my own little flower shop or flower arrangement store, right? So the career is the bigger picture, the track of this thing. It could be your whole life, but it doesn't have to be, because as I mentioned, you can change careers. Education in languages is different from flowers. It would be hard to combine those, but you could if you really tried hard. But that's the focus, is this whole track. Within that, then there might be different kinds of employment. There might be employment with a certain employer, which would be your job. My job right now is I'm working as an English teacher at this school. I've been working there for 6 months. That's my job. What's your job? That's my job. Okay. What's your career? I'm an English teacher. My last job was in China, and now I'm working on my own. I'm self-employed. Okay. That's your job now. So jobs change, careers are more steady and long-term. That's generally the difference, right? People at parties, or when you meet people, they don't say, what's your career? They might say, what's your job? What's your job? Or they might say, what do you do? So the focus will be on what is the thing now, not the whole big, giant picture. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, now let's talk about function versus task. Now these are actually very different, function versus task. If we're talking about this trend or this theme of people working in companies, then the function of something is what it does, and the function of a role is what the role is for. Now, the reason I say role is that I don't want to say that a person has a function. Sometimes that can make it seem like the person is a little bit of a robot. Sometimes people do say that, what's my function here? But it can come across as a little bit mechanical and robotic. So generally speaking, we would say that a role, whoever's in the role, has a function. The function of this role is to make sure when people have concerns about their healthcare benefits that someone is there to explain to them how it works. This is the function of this role. Okay? Now, there is a person in the role. Yes, that's true, but we don't say your function here often. Sometimes that can be a little bit like, you're a robot, do this thing. You're not even a person. Sometimes it can feel that way. But we could say the function of a role. However, you can talk about functions of all kinds of things. You can say, for example, the function of a machine. what does the machine do? You could say, what is the function of this process that we have? This hiring process that we have. You could say, what is the function of our meetings that we have? Why do we have these meetings? What is their function? What does it do? What's it for? Why is it there? In other words, function is about purpose. Function is about what something accomplishes. Okay? And we should be a little bit careful about using it for people. Now, task is a specific thing that you do. Task is not the same as job always, but can be closely related. If we say, for example, my job today is to finish this giant stack of paperwork. Okay, so that is a task. That's a task. It's one specific thing. Now, we use job in two different ways. One is a job of today I have to do this thing, this large stack of paperwork. But also we say my job is in finance, or what's your job? My job is I'm a civil engineer. That's my job. Okay, so job is our employment, but it's also today I have to do this. Well, that could be a task as well. Today I have to do this. It's a specific thing that you have to do. Tasks can be very small. A task could be, please go over there and tell Henry that I need blah, blah, blah by 6 p.m. and then come back and tell me what he said. That's a task which could take 30 seconds. So it's a specific thing that you're trying to accomplish. Usually it's not something that's long-term, days, weeks, months. It's more like a today thing or a 5 minutes thing or a go get me a cup of coffee type thing. That's generally how we think about tasks. Now, last one is hire versus employ. So employ, we talked about employee, employer, employment. We talked about this, right? So we know what the relationship is. We're talking about the relationship between the worker getting paid and the one doing the paying, right? So when we say employ, we're talking about a verb that the person paying is doing to the recipient of the money who's doing the work. Okay? But that is not just a momentary thing. That is an ongoing thing. I employ 39 people. What does that mean? In an ongoing way, I pay 39 people to work for me and do what I tell them to do, or at least help me do what I need to do, right? I'm the one paying them to do that. 39 people work for me. I employ 39 people. 39 people are employed by me. I employ 39 people. Okay, so it's a verb that talks about that relationship of payment and work. Whereas if we say hire, it's just a momentary thing. You're hired. You're not hired, and then time goes along, you have an interview, they choose you, you're hired, and then as soon as you're hired, then you're employed. So hired is the switch or the trigger or the thing, the moment from going to not employed to employed, going from not working at this company to working at this company, right? And so it's not a state like employed is. Employed is a condition, it's a state. Hired is a momentary thing. It's a transitional verb, and that's how we use it. I got hired. Oh, great. Are you continuously being hired? No, you're not. It's a momentary transitional thing from one condition, one state to another. Hopefully all of those are clear. Once again, Fatima Books, some challenging differences. I look forward to the next ones. We're going to be adding these to a playlist because now we have 4. So if you're interested in checking out the others, make sure that you subscribe and check out that playlist. And also make sure you hit the like button. I would deeply, genuinely appreciate that. And also don't forget to check out my full courses in the links in the description.